In 2018, 4.3 million people rode the New York subway every day. About 1 billion turnstiles turn in these characteristic stops a year. The modern subway represents one of the most effective transport systems in the entire world, helping the environment, people, and the economy every time you use one of these trains. It is a result of innovation that happened early in the 20th century. The location, New York, New York. The time, a cool early September 1906. And the innovation, the electrification of the New York train lines. In the early 1900s, many people were unhappy with the state of locomotive transport because of all of the pollution and crashes back in the day.
Of course, the steam locomotives were noisy, and they were dirty, and they put smoke in the air, and were a pretty big safety concern, and that was one of the things that caused a lot of public demand for electrification. And what happened in 1902 was that two trains collided inside the tunnel, and they left about a dozen people dead, and obviously there was a huge public outcry that said we have to get these steam locomotives out of that tunnel.
Also, on top of that, trains at the time required high maintenance. Electric trains required much less maintenance and therefore were cheaper to maintain.
To maintain a steam engine is extensive. You have to have coaling towers, you have to bring coal in, you have to rebuild them, you have to clean them after every so many miles, you have to tear the firebox apart. I mean, it is heavy maintenance. And where it would take many hundreds of people to maintain a steam engine, it took a few dozen to maintain an electric engine.
Although they were not installed for this, electric trains are very environmentally friendly. They are used today by companies like Amtrak.
We do have a department that's dedicated to sustainability, and that includes relamping, for example, to reduce our energy costs and our carbon footprint, but also going to the cleaner burning Tier 4 diesel locomotives, replacing the older Tier 3 and Tier 1 locomotives that we have. That means there will be a lot less fuel being consumed.
Because of the economic prosperity of trains, New York was a pretty competitive market, with manufacturing companies always trying to market innovative solutions to appease New York area railroads. At the time, there were two major train manufacturing companies in the area, Baldwin and American Locomotive Company.
And there were two electric manufacturers, Westinghouse and GE. Now, GE was the successor to Thomas Edison's Edison Electric. So GE is Thomas Edison, Westinghouse is Tesla. Edison believed in DC current, Tesla believed in AC. So some of the early engines developed with DC current, some with AC current.
When electricity systems were first being developed, a century plus ago, there was this sort of AC versus DC, alternating current versus direct current. They settled on AC current as the main way to get transmission done. And there's a lot of reasons. The main one, that particularly from today's perspective, is that it's a lot easier and cheaper to maintain the infrastructure. You can what they call step up and step down. So when you're transmitting electricity over miles, hundreds of miles, you need it to be at a really high voltage because it's more efficient. But then when it comes into your house, you need to get that down to a much lower, safer voltage.
Now, Baldwin chose to partner with Westinghouse. American Locomotive Company chose to partner with GE. So they were competing manufacturers.
Westinghouse and Baldwin created an early commercial electric train in 1906. On every train, the manufacturer put a builder's plate that has information on their product. On this train, there were four, two from Westinghouse and two from Baldwin. A builder's plate states the manufacturers of the train, and in this case, Westinghouse was responsible for the electric components of the train, while Baldwin created the structure of the train itself. This was the EP1 engine, Electric Passenger Engine version 1.
Well, there were 41 engines bought initially of the EP1s, Electric Passenger number 1. They were the very first electric engines, or locomotives, electric locomotives that hauled passengers, and they represented the beginning of the conversion from steam-powered passenger trains in the east coast of the United States to electric.
The New York, New Haven, and Hartford Railroad, an up-and-coming railroad in the New York area, realized the possibility of these electric trains and were one of the first railroads that started creating the infrastructure necessary to support them.
Then the New Haven began slowly building different segments of track up from New York to New Haven and on to Boston and so forth. It was one of the first companies, you ask about electric locomotives, it was one of the first companies in the United States to use electric locomotives in the first decade of the 20th century.
After the New Haven line was built and ran using EP1 locomotives, it soon became required that all railroads operate their trains with electricity. This was because of the law known as the Kaufman Act, which required all locomotive companies to operate their trains in the 5 boroughs with electricity.
It was a law sponsored by an assemblyman from Manhattan by the name of Victor Kaufman. In 1923, he sponsored the bill in the New York State Legislature that required the railroads to operate all of their trains with electricity by January 1st, 1926.
As a result of the Kaufman Act, electric trains were able to flourish. Although they had been previously frowned upon due to the large upstart cost to build the power lines necessary for them to function, the act made them the only trains that could operate in the New York area, therefore making the investment profitable for companies like Baldwin. From the late 1920s to the early 1960s, electric trains were thriving in New York. The New Haven line bought up large sections of electric track all throughout the Northeast area surrounding New York.
And they became very unprofitable. What you could realistically charge people versus what it cost to operate was escalating on and on and on.
So as a consequence, Amtrak was formed. So Amtrak continued to, I wouldn't say prosper, but survive. And then over time, the critical mass got bigger and bigger and bigger.
The impacts of the electric trains were long-lasting. They led to the electrification of the Northeast Corridor, which is one of the longest in the world, stretching from Washington, D.C. to upstate New York.
In the Northeast Corridor, they're almost exclusively electric.
They represent the battle of Westinghouse's alternating current versus Thomas Edison's direct current, known today as General Electric.
You know, it led to refrigerator. I mean, the whole understanding of electricity, the generation of electricity. The first electricity that Thomas Edison, the DC power, DC electricity can only go several blocks, 5-6 blocks, where AC can be transported across hundreds of miles.
They have proven themselves under the streets of New York and all along the East Coast, so it is clear that they should be utilized all across the world.
The fastest trains in the world are in Europe and Japan and now China, and they're all electric.
And finally, they support the needs of the people, remain economically suitable, and are more friendly to the environment.